Coin traders, how we doing? Thanks for joining me for the show. Looking at ICP, Internet Computer, ICP on that ticker. Really big sideways pattern that we have been looking at ever since the middle of June. So a very, very long period of more or less flatlining pattern. Crypto space has been doing that for a lot of the altcoins though, so nothing necessarily that abnormal. Looking at about 150 days worth of just sideways consolidation. So a lot of opportunity here for growth. Typically, when we do see patterns like this, we know that that does confirm a longer-term accumulation bottom before we start actually rallying back to the upside. Because when we see patterns provide longer-term accumulation zones and more or less a big supportive region in this overall instance, we know that that's a very good sign. And so pretty much we're looking at a heart line being kind of around the current price level at more or less around $8 is pretty much the center mass for a lot of this price trading. So even if we turn on the VPVR volume profile visible range, you can see just how that does line up. And we're kind of looking at two different phases and cycles right now of this overall same sort of thing. Because as we looked at in the beginning of the year, the first part of the rally, same sort of thing. A lot of sideways trading from the end of December, pretty much right until we had the breakdown at the start of June here. So pretty much ICP has been pretty interesting because we had a lot of upside move sideways for several months, small pullback, and then sideways for several months. So right now, big opportunity for this, especially with sentiment changing and growing over the crypto space. A lot of opportunity, especially to blast forward, but we know that up overhead is going to be this very big resistive zone, as indicated by all this previous price trading back, like we said, from pretty much December, the end of December last year, when we had our nice big rally all the way up until when we did have our pullback pretty much right at the start of the summer at the very beginning of June to ultimately pull us back. So right now, looking for support and defense, but the good sign is that we've already hit our low. So we have had a low, higher low, and then putting in a next higher low. So I know it's close. We were looking at a low coming in at 680, and then recently on the 4th of November, right before the election, we were looking at a low of 682. So just barely, but still nonetheless, still putting in a higher low. And then now, obviously, nice upside Trump pump pulling back now. So now are relying on pulling back to this level. Great entries, obviously, if you are dollar cost averaging into ICP. Not financial advice, of course, but looking over on the right, big point of nice mass here. So we know that this is a very, very relevant zone. Not expecting prices to dip any low this, especially after holding it for the whole summer and especially now part of the fall. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off VPVR volume profile visible range again. Next thing we want to look at is a trend line that starts from this bounce pretty much from July to the current. So looking at a very, very big resistance trend line. If we do see prices actually break above this, hugely bullish scenario in that instance. So right now have 1 test, 2 tests, 3 tests. Obviously, when we do get a break, we're going to want to see actually a back test of this trend line as support before continuing on to the upside. Like we said, that's probably going to test about the $13 level, but just focusing right now on some of these highs. So if we look at price levels too, first we are going to be looking at a closing level pretty much right at 950, followed by right around the $10 level at about 950. So big zone of resistance up overhead from 950 to about $10. Like we said, once we break that, big point of support should flip then before testing up into the $13 level. Above that, though, like we said, we're going to see a lot of resistance points because we're going to be looking just shy of 11 at 1081, which if we do look left here, big point of resistance once we broke below, but we also had it as support, looking left, big point of support before putting in that trend high, and then also big point of more or less support, and then big point of resistance before flipping it. So we do have several big zones of resistance up overhead, and like we said, once we break that, that's going to be a very good sign. Should be able to maintain support on that level before putting in another big breakout signal here. Now for ICP, we are looking at the longer term charts being a lot more relevant. So looking over here at the weekly chart for starters, we are looking at currently holding resistance on the 26 and 50. So after we held for several weeks, the 12 period had a nice candle break bullish on top of it. That's when we saw our nice Trump pump last week. But then if we go ahead and zoom in, we're actually looking to hopefully defend this 12 period EMA. Right now we are below it. So price currently at 8024, 12 period EMA 8247. So we'd love to see the bulls actually close the weekly candle on top of that level. That'd be a hugely good sign because then we could retest these 26 and 50 periods EMA once again. Now what we do have that's a current good sign is that the bullish candle that just closed actually knocked out about 4 weeks of price trading. So one nice week can actually invalidate 4 weeks or effectively a month of a lot of downside pullback action. So pretty good sign overall, especially like we said, still maintaining weekly higher lows. And in fact, we can actually draw a very nice trend line here playing out for ICP. So we can look at pretty much where all these closing levels are and how much we are seeing this trend level provide support. So we have multiple tests. We have 2 tests on this instance. We have 2 tests. We have 1 test, and then we have 2 tests again. So multiple tests along this trend line. So we are thinking that it does provide support since it is functioning right now. So even at a downside, we'd still love to see this test, this price level hold, and we would be looking at just above $7 at about $7.18. But really, the ultimate upside target is going to be breaking and holding a close on top of the 26 and the 50 period EMA. So as we can see, when we did finally have that in the previous instance, that was a very strong indicator of an upside move. And since we haven't had that much retracement actually below these EMAs on this bear move, the likelihood does start to increase of breaking it, confirming it as support, and then heading back to the upside. Typically, if we were going to break below and hold these as resistance and see a downtrend, we wouldn't actually have sideways trading. We would more or less still continue a downside direction, testing some low supports. But because we have this very nice trend line, and obviously the exponential moving average is getting very close together on this overall chart, we know that the tests keep coming for upside resistance, and the more and more a trend line or resistance or price level does get tested, the more the increased likelihood of that level does tend to want to break in the opposite side that it is. So for example, once support gets tested multiple times, typically support breaks and then flips and becomes resistance, and it's a downside move. Conversely is true for resistance. If resistance gets tested multiple times, we do see it break, and then ultimately that does flip into support and provide a lot more guidance to an upside direction. So do you want to look at the EMA, or excuse me, the RSI, the technical indicators of the relative strength index, RSI. So did have a big spike, which wasn't even the trend high, obviously put in a lower high here. Bearish divergence here pulled back below this exponential moving average on the RSI. And then so now we're actually looking at kind of breaking and holding mostly an RSI that is above this exponential moving average for the RSI. So we'd love to see this continue to the upside and so have RSI maintain a positive direction on top of that exponential moving average. So for this to be in this kind of setup, yet meanwhile be below the exponential moving average, is still a good indication that we're going to see a little bit more RSI support and provide a little bit more pressure to ultimately end up breaking those exponential moving averages. And we know that sentiment is starting to greatly change right now for altcoins, especially with Bitcoin in putting all-time highs in with above 93K, obviously needing to pull back a little bit right there too. But when Bitcoin does get so big and obviously putting in such new all-time highs, we do know that sentiment does start to really shift, and obviously that does start to trickle down into some other altcoins. Now, while we're looking at technical indicators, do actually want to look at the MACD moving average, convergence, and divergence. Here we are sitting below the 0 line, but we are still in a bullish formation, actually, even though we are still sitting below EMAs and obviously in a little bit of a sideways trend. But ultimately, this is flipping bullish along with the weekly RSI. And so we know that typically this is going to want to switch in a positive direction, especially since the histogram bars have returned to the 0 line, and now we're seeing green histogram bars on top of the 0 line. Now I'm going to flip into the monthly chart. Been a while since we've looked at the monthly on ICP. So specifically just want to talk about this massive level of monthly closing resistance because we have had it for month over month. So if we can look even on the chart, 4 months of big resistance here for the close and looking just below the $9 level. So 898.3. So if the current candle can actually hold a break, or whenever the current candle or the monthly candle does end up breaking above this, this will be significant because in addition to this price level, we also have this 12-period monthly EMA kind of providing this downside resistance, which we've seen confirmed as resistance on multiple attempts. So pretty much right on the next candle or two, this is going to align with both the price level resistance for the close, as well as the EMA 12 for resistance. So plenty of big upside resistance. But like we said, if we go ahead and look at these month over month, we are seeing higher month over month lows. Obviously, with the current month being a little bit of that factor that does break to the downside, now putting in a little bit of lower low. So that's kind of another reason why it is so critical and crucial for the bulls to be able to confirm this low, put up a rally, and actually break through this $9 level, which would see a break of not only the resistive $9 price level, but also this downside exponential moving average. Flipping down shorter term into the 4-hour now, we are looking at a little bit of a falling wedge on the current setup. So we do see support falling, and then also we do see this resistance trend line also falling. So going to be expecting a little bit of a breakout, especially confirming the price levels that are around this center heart line of mass for support. So a very good opportunity to see a breakout of this and then ultimately put in another test of this $9 level, which would be huge to actually see break, and ideally on this current trend would see a high get put in above 9,679, which would top out and make a new high in that instance, which is exactly what we want to see from a technical standpoint. So like we said, we are expecting a little bit of a bigger upside rally from the current price point to that $13 level of resistance based on the previous trend from December to June. It would be about a 60% upside move. So plenty of opportunity for some growth. Don't necessarily expect anything too much bigger than that in the shorter term. But once we do break above that, then pretty much we are going to see the price of ICP just absolutely fly, as long as we do continue a very nice, strong upside movement and directional flow for the rest of the altcoins here. So I have seen a little bit of a sentiment slowdown since the earlier start of the year on the rally, but nonetheless, still very good sign to actually put in a lot of upside move. Obviously, zooming out, plenty of room to grow. So even looking at the recent trend highs up to about 80 bucks, would be middle of 80, almost a 10x, over a 10x, about a 10.5x gain. So plenty of growth opportunities here for ICP. But otherwise, with that, that is going to go ahead and wrap up the show. Hope you all enjoyed. Would love hearing everyone's thoughts, questions, predictions, issues, disagreements, all that stuff down in the comments sections below. Do love getting back to each and every one of you. Or feel free to reach out on Twitter or X at Quinn_trades is the handle over there. Do look forward to chatting. Hope you all enjoyed this show today. If you did, please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you have not done so just yet. But otherwise, stay safe, take care, coin traders, and I will catch you back in the next video.